Hi, Ned.
Hi there. We will be starting shortly. Hi, Hans.
Hello.
Got 65 participants so far.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so everyone is aware, we are also streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/City of Monterey for those who like to join that way as well. Thank you.
All right. All right. I think we're almost ready, Ned. 2 more minutes, right?
Yep, we'll give people 2 more minutes and then we'll get started.
Okay.
Hans, could we do an audio test just quickly? I understood there was a little bit of background noise.
Can you hear me? 1, 2, 3.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay.
Still a little fuzzy. There's a little odd sound, but that's okay.
Well, Eric J says no sounds on our end.
Perfect. Well, then it's just me. That's a good problem to have.
Yep. All right, Ned, I think we are going to start now. It's 6:30. Are you okay with that? Can we start?
Yep, let's go ahead and start.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending our virtual town hall meeting. We had quite a number of signups. I think at the latest count, there were over 270 registrations for this meeting, which caused us to purchase some more Zoom meeting licenses. And that was an expense that we were happy to do because it appears to us that more of those virtual town hall meetings might occur in the next couple of months. So this participation is really great, and I really hope that a lot of the folks that have signed up will be joining us. So today is a virtual town hall meeting. What that means is that between now and 8 p.m. We will present to you what our proposed budget is. We will give you some background why we are proposing what we are proposing. We try to explain the challenges that we all face as a city of Monterey with respect to many of our service levels and many of the things that we are doing day to day. And at the end of that presentation, and I will hope to wrap it up within 20 minutes, At the end of this presentation, we are asking you to give us your questions, give us your proposals. There's a procedure, as you all know by now, how to raise your hand in Zoom meetings, etc. But at the end, it's really important that many of you can talk and bring us your ideas, give us feedback, tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like, tell us what we are overlooking. So it's very important for us to get that feedback. We'll collect this between my presentation and 8 p.m. All those that might not be able to talk to us, please don't be discouraged. Tomorrow night we have another council meeting with public comments, but also send us your emails. I promise you that I will read every single email and I will respond to every email that we receive. And we have already received a few emails that were very, very interesting and very helpful for us as staff members. And we share them, of course, also with the City Council. So please, that's the procedure for tonight. And I will share my screen now with all of you to show you my presentation. And I hope that will work. Okay, here we go. So are we good with that, Nat?
Yes, we can see your slide. We are having some technical difficulties with the YouTube streaming from Zoom, but we have this recorded and we can upload it after the fact.
Okay.
Thanks.
So again, I need to introduce Nat Rajanasathira. He is our assistant city manager. He is the one you can blame for the technology and for the success that we have with the technology. He will get praise, and if it doesn't work, it's YouTube's fault. Then we also have Lauren Lai, our finance director, attending this meeting, as well as Jordan Cubbs, our assistant finance director. And together, I really hope we can answer a lot of your questions, but we will also take copious notes of what you're saying. So if I look down, I'm not doing anything disrespectful, but writing down notes from the comments that we get from you. So without further ado, let me basically say on March 13, the city of Monterey declared a local emergency because we saw what was coming ahead was not fun for us. COVID-19 was already in some areas showing the devastation. And so on March 13th, we declared a local emergency. And the very next day, we closed down our city facilities. And a couple of days later, the county declared the county emergency. And a few days later, the state of California declared a similar statewide lockdown. Our priorities from day one were very clear. We wanted to be sure that we can maintain public safety. Our residents needed to feel safe in their homes, in their city, and it was very clear for us that if we have to shelter in place, if we shut down many operations, it's absolutely mandatory that people can rely on our 911 services as well as our public works services. So maintain public safety was critical, and we did that. The second element was we wanted to keep our local government functional. Now, it's very clear that people had to stay in home, and it was divided into essential and non-essential. But what was important for us is that you, our residents, and you, our businesses, always will receive answers and help. So we remained fully functional. In the first day of the crisis to today, everything was open, everything was responding to requests for services. And last but not least, we also understood from day one that the impacts of COVID-19 on our industries, on the hospitality industries, on our businesses, on our retail businesses, etc., etc. We understood that we needed to also work hard to encourage a speedy recovery of our industries. So, going forward, we all know that what COVID-19 did to the community and to our nation, and especially also it hit us hard in our budget. And that's the reason why we are meeting today with all of you. We looked at the first impact in the early April timeframe, and we tried to quantify how much we would be losing in general fund revenues. At that time, mid-April, we estimated the losses to be around $10 million. And you might recall that this was the number that we promoted and spoke about during the council meeting, also in media briefings. Well, today we look back and we can say the number is probably closer to $13 million of losses between March and June 30th, 2019. And going forward into the next fiscal year, we are looking at another $18 million of losses. And we use some predictive modeling that is based on data that we receive from the Monterey County Convention and Visitors Bureau, the MCCVB, and from other institutions that basically help us to estimate how is the sales tax impacted, how is the transient occupancy tax, which is called also hotel tax, how does it impact our revenues. So to sum this up, that's around $31 million that we lose in a little bit over 15 and a half months. The good news is that we filled our reserves in February. We always wanted to fill them up at 16.6%. That is what the council decided was the correct funding level for those reserves. The bad news is that's just $13.7 million. So while we are there where we should be, and we did this in February this year, 2020, at 13.7, if you see what the losses are that we are facing, $13.7 million is a very finite number and can be used up very, very soon. The good news also was that in October last year, we declared a fiscal emergency, seeing already that we will have structural fiscal imbalances over the next 3, 5, 6 years. And we went forward with the sales tax.
Okay, can everyone hear me? I'm not sure. It seems like we're having some technical difficulties here with Zoom. Is it Lauren? I think we may have lost Hans. Lauren, are you? Let's see here.
I'm still on.
You're still on? Okay. Looks like we lost Hans. Our technical challenges are never ending, aren't they?
So shall we wait? Hans can join back on?
Yeah, let's just wait and see if he can rejoin. If not, we'll continue. So let me do this, and if everyone can just wait for a moment, we'll be right.
That's good.
Okay, looks like we have Hans back.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the disconnect. What was the last time that you heard me say?
You know, I've been Lauren might be able to help with that. We've been trying to troubleshoot the YouTube function within Zoom isn't working. This is why I like Google much better than Zoom.
Yeah,
frankly.
let's continue and forget about YouTube because I think YouTube is an interesting medium, but we have everyone signed up on Zoom. Somebody has disabled the screen sharing. If somebody can please bring this back up for me.
Yep, I'll go ahead and do that. We'll make you a co-host here, and you can share your screen, Hans. Yes, and thank you all the panelists who are helping us through this process. The last slide showed lost revenue in 2019 seems, we've got sales tax, so on there.
Okay, so I think I was, thank you who just shot me a tip telling me where I ended up. I was talking about the reserves, which are at 16.6%. This is a number that we reached for the first time in February. The sad news is that's not enough. The other good news was that we also got Measure G approved, which was a sales tax measure. And we went in October 2019 in front of the voters and told them already we are in a fiscal emergency because we were projecting structural deficits for the next few years. And so going forward, we have a $31 million loss that we have to cover in the next 2 years, or basically 15 months, because it started in March 2020 and it goes forward to June 30th, 2021. Plus, we also have a $2.8 million projected structural deficit. Now, what is being paid out of the general fund? That is always a good question, and it's really straightforward. We pay for Monterey's core services out of the general fund. Public safety always comes to mind first. This is police, this is fire, this is public works. The second one is parks and recreation. We use general fund revenues to pay for our recreation centers in Schulze Park, the senior center, Hilltop Park Center, Casanova Oaknoll Park Center, Youth Center, or El Estero Park Center. We just renamed it. But it also pays for the sports center. And last but not least, and very importantly, also it pays for the library services and our museums. So these are the funds that the general fund is paying for. And as you can tell, if we have a loss of $31 million in general fund revenues and losses, well, Monterey's core services are affected by those losses. Okay, next question, next slide will show you a little bit where we are with our revenues. It shows you also where we are with our expenditures. And when you look at the green numbers, these are the numbers of revenues that we generate through our program fees in recreation and in our sports center. And you see that in the recreation centers, or in recreation, in our programs, in our camps, in our field sports, and in our sports center fees, we are generating around $6 million of revenues. So these are the revenues that basically pay for all those programming. What we spent though in recreation and sports center is about $9.5 million. So you see a difference of around $3.5 million. And now one can say, why don't you just do cost recovery? Why don't you charge what it costs to create a Camp Quien-Sabe or a camp in Whispering Pines? Well, if we would charge what it cost us to do, we would exclude a lot of folks from those programs, because the price point in which those services are delivered, the price point in which you go to a class at the sports center or visit the sports center might be at a level that you really don't want to spend that money on that. So every taxpayer can expect that our programs to a degree are supported by general fund revenues. We are not in the business to make a profit. We are in the business to give taxpayers a fair return on their investments. So you see that here in the sports center and in the recreation center and the recreation programming, there's a difference, a delta of $3.5 million. What you don't see here on the sports center in the red bar also, that the sports center has an annual debt payment for the extension of the sports center, which is around another $540,000. So that red bar is in actuality close to $10 million. And here, of course, the lower portion of that, you will see the library. And the library is, again, a free service, an operation that no one expects that you go in there and you have to pay to get a book, or you have to pay to have a conversation with a librarian for your school district, for your school project. So again, the library cost us about $3.1 million. We make about $40,000 in small revenues. Good news is some of the programming in the library, in addition to the $3.1 million cost of the general fund, are funded through donations, but those those donations are very, very small and fund very, very small programs. So I don't want to beat it to death, but the details that you will see right now show you a little bit where we are going with our numbers and where we got them from, and how we are looking for solutions in how to address the $31 million budget deficit. There's another way of saying it. COVID-19 reduced our hotel tax revenues to revenues levels from 2005. The challenge, though, is that we have 2020 salaries, 2020 service and staffing levels in place. So what we are facing over the past 3.5 months and the next 12 months, at least the next 12 months, is that our revenues have degraded to 2005 estimates right now. Here's another interesting chart that I wanted to show you. It shows you basically where our TOT is, and I just clean up my screen here a little bit. So you see that on the right-hand side, the two bars that show you the projection for fiscal year 20, which will end in June 30th this month, a decline of 30%. And for next fiscal year, we estimate another 40% decline for our hotel tax. And that brings us really back to fiscal year 2005, 16 years ago. I don't want to show you all the details here, but what you take away from that slide is that we had to make a decision of where we want to target our budget reductions. And there is a scenario A, that is the more optimistic scenario that predicts only an $18 million loss. And then there is a scenario B, that is the more conservative estimate of $23.4 million loss. So here's what we did. We are shooting for the middle. We are shooting for the average scenario, for a scenario basically that is less optimistic, but also less pessimistic. Here are a lot of the details of the program cuts that our departments are proposing. And you see police is proposing program cuts in the amount of $1.6 million. Fire, 1.4. Parks has 2-3 positions that are coming up for retirement, and they are proposing to not backfill those positions. When you go through this whole list, you will find that we are reducing our programs by another $5.1 million. And together with those cuts here, we are bringing in the solution for the average scenario, which is a budget reductions of around $21 million. You see that the NCIP has been postponed. You see that the layoffs that we had to undertake in April and that became effective today will save us about $8.1 million. You see that the retirements are about 2.5. That program cuts and other costs, that's what I just showed you, are $5.1 million. We propose to take some of the reserves, $600,000. We also propose to stop the capital improvement program that was budgeted at $1.4 million. But we don't apply the whole $1.4 million into the budget reductions scenario. We intend to retain $500,000 just for greenbelt fuel reduction. So it's very important for us to continue to create fire safety in our neighborhoods. So here's the question. How would you balance your own checkbook? If this is your budget, and it is your budget, how do you balance your checkbook? You will look at your expenses, sure. Will you cut back on your own expenses? Will you consider cutbacks in your cable bill, in your car bill, in your Netflix, whatever? You will look at your expenses. You will review them. If forced, will you use savings? Probably. To what extent will you use savings? Will you use it all at once? Do you want to stretch your savings? How long do you think you need to use savings? Do you do a little bit of everything? So the question tonight is, what would you do? How would you balance your checkbook? Here are some solutions that we propose to the council. We need to talk to our bargaining units, to our labor groups, and ask them for labor concessions. All of our labor groups are right now in contracts, in existing contracts. So it is not something that you can do as a public agency, like somebody else can do this and just say, we are reducing your salary by 10%. That is something that has to be negotiated at the negotiating table, and we are going to go forward and entertain a discussion with our bargaining units about labor concessions. I cannot tell you right now if this is successful or not, but I can promise you that we will go out and we have those talks with our bargaining units to make them understand that only all of us together can help us to get through this fiscal crisis. We already proposed budget reductions across all our departments. We have to look at reducing sports center hours of services. Right now, the sports center opened at 5 a.m. and closed at 9 p.m. Well, you need a lot of staff for that. So maybe we have different opening hours. The same for the library. The library opens 7 days a week. Again, what can we afford? What can we afford, and what will the customer be willing to tolerate in savings? We can look at our park centers. We have 4 recreation centers in a town of about 2 or 3 square miles, 4 recreation centers. So do we really need to operate all of them? Are there different other ideas out there how to operate them? We also need to look at our fire stations and need to find out, do we have enough fire stations? Do we have too many fire stations? Or do we have just about the right number of fire stations? But now is the time also to look at that. And in certain areas, we may dial back also our park maintenance. Now, there has been some information shared on social media that I want to correct. Our budget proposal does not include reducing the staffing of our fire stations or the reduction of firefighters who serve in the fire stations. That's not part of our proposed budget. That is not raised by staff. So we are not looking in our proposed budget to reduce the staffing levels of our firefighters. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow, the fire stations will be staffed as they have been staffed for many years. So that is not part of our proposed budget. We have raised the issue about the paramedic program. That is a pilot program that the council started, or that we started together with the council in December 2018. That program is due to expire by October, and the council will have to look at that probably in July to make a decision if they want to continue the pilot program. Now, a paramedic pilot program has high value for the community. Our firefighters are often, most of the time, the first responders on site if somebody has a medical emergency call. They can be there and administer paramedic services for those that require paramedic services. It's a fact that most of the time they arrive before the ambulance arrives. The ambulance then continues the life-saving measures, loads up the patient, brings it to the community hospital of Monterey Peninsula. So what we have as a proposal in front of the council is something that routinely will pop up in July with respect to the pilot program. It's not part of our current budget reduction scenarios to reduce the paramedic program. Likewise, it has nothing to do with reducing firefighters serving in our stations. So I just wanted to clarify that and use that town hall meeting to bring this up and ask you if you have more questions about that. Other solutions are revenue solutions. Sales tax, I already thanked you. I want to say it again. Thank you for Measure G. That comes at the right time. It will help us with our structural deficit, but it will not be the saving grace. As you all know, sales tax is down as well, but the additional ½ cent will really be beneficial for us. We have to look at our cost recovery of our fees. We need to adjust fees. We did this just for the campground fees, but we also need to look at the sports center membership fees and the access fees there. We have preferred rates for residents and the rates for non-residents are also reasonable. Maybe we need to look also, how do we charge non-residents? Maybe they should have a larger cost share of using the sports center that is paid and supported by Monterey General Fund tax revenues. We also need to look at our recreation program and the fees that we charge for the various leagues that are using our sport field. Last but not least, tomorrow we will propose to the council to start a discussion about a TOT increase of 2%. As you can see here, the city of Monterey has a very low TOT rate. It's at 10% right now. And of course, we have to discuss the various impacts for the TOT rate, because not everything can be expressed in a simple bar chart, because what also our hotels are paying are the cost for the conference center, for the rebuilding of the conference center. So on top of our 10% TOT is an additional rate that for the conference center hotels, these are the hotels Marriott, Portola Hotel and Spa, and the Hotel Pacific, which is an additional 4.1% surcharge on top of the 10%. Other full services hotels in the city of Monterey pay also into the conference center bonds to pay those back. The full service hotels like the Hotel Clement, the Monterey Hotel and Spa, the Monterey Plaza Hotel and Spa, the Hyatt Hotel, these are also regarded full services hotels, and they pay around 2.1% in addition to the TOT. And then all other hotels and motels add another 0.8% to the TOT. So when I show that chart, I always want to tell you give you the whole picture. So it's not just 10%, there are surcharges on that as well. Having said that, trust me, the other cities, left and right of those bar charts, have similar surcharges as well. Here's where we are with our competitors. You can see that various cities have already 14%, 13, 12%. And Monterey, really with our competitors, we are at the low end of that chart. So I'm coming to my last slide. You all have to decide. We all have to jointly figure this out. We need to find out what are the next steps. The hospitality industry is still the backbone for funding our core services. So we really need to look how are we restoring those services, because these are the ones that ultimately pay for the library, for the sports center, for the recreation centers, because as I've shown you, there are millions and millions and millions of dollars that have to be used to provide additional funding for delivering those services. We also have to restore our core services in recreation, sports center, and library. And here's also something that I hope you all understand, and you have heard me say it before, is we will open the library the first day when we are allowed to open the library. We will open the Schulze Center, our senior center, the very first day that we are allowed to open the Schulze Center. We will bring back staff to operate the sports center. We have to do that because all those facilities have you as faithful customers, faithful residents that are using those services. So the library will not be closed. The Schulze Center will not stay closed. We can open it as soon as we have the permission from the county and from the state to operate them. As a matter of fact, a little bit of good news is our library director is right now working on figuring out how to provide curbside pickup at the library. So things are gradually coming back. So we want to restore those services. Shall we restore them to the full glory that they were? Shall we only restore it to what we can actually afford? You, the community, say many times, bring it back as soon as we can, because rightfully so, we are all missing those services. But think about the checkbook. What can we afford? So what is the income? What can we do to bring back those services? Last but not least, one point that is often overlooked is no one knows what we will do tomorrow. No one knows how the pandemic will develop. We all have an idea, and we all think that our idea may prevail, but we really don't know. And we really don't know if we have flattened the curve or if there is a spike ahead. We really don't know if there's a vaccine coming sooner or later. So the pandemic still dictates what we are doing. So what do you think we should do? And before I ask Ned to open it up and ask you guys about your opinion, I want to share with you one other quick story. Today is my 23-year anniversary with the city of Monterey. 23 years ago, I was hired as an analyst, management analyst by the Public Works Department. And when I became city manager 2 years ago, a city manager of a city nearby, very large city, said, "Welcome to the Lonely Heart Club." And what he meant by that is of course, that being a city manager comes with a lot of challenges, a lot of privileges, a lot of duties, responsibilities. But one of them is that you have to make decisions. And sometimes it can feel a little bit lonely at the top. So that's what he meant when he said, "Welcome to the Lonely Heart Club." And I looked at him and I told him, you know, I never felt this is a lonely job, because at the end of the day, we have a great team. The city of Monterey has a great, great educated base of neighbors, of residents, of businesses. I never felt that the job would be lonely or it would be a Lonely Heart Club assignment. This is an assignment that we all can solve together. And as such, I felt also as city manager, I can always rely on my team, on our team in the city of Monterey. We can always rely on our city council to make the right decisions. And most importantly, we can rely on you telling us what you think makes sense. Because when we go all back to the basic of that, that's what it's all about. We are here together to form, build, address our community. We are here to create our quality of life. With that, I'm asking Ned to please use the raised hands and ask questions. And our team, including myself, we will take notes, but we will also try to answer your questions as they come up. I ask you to keep it brief so that a lot of people have a chance to ask questions. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Hans. For those who are not familiar with Zoom, there's a function where you can raise your hand, and we'll be taking questions and comments. And it's amazing. We're so grateful to have 333 people with us live today on Zoom. We'll take the first comment or question from Gloria Kim. Gloria. Are you with us?
I'll table my question until later. Thank you.
Okay. We'll take Richard Riccello.
Hi,
Richard, are you there?
I want to limit my comments to revenue. I totally agree. This is a math question. We're in a financial disaster. We need that TOT increase. I agree completely with you on it, but it's not enough. 2% is 3 to 4 million a year. We're way, way beyond that. I think it's time, and I see all the communities around the Western United States along the coast, they're doing a visitation tax. I think we need to look at that. We have 5 million visitors a year, and a big chunk of them are day visitors. They cost us a lot of money, from wearing the streets out to fire and police and all the services that we supply to 5 million visitors. Please look at some form of visitation tax. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. I appreciate that suggestion. I want to be also very clear. One of the elements that I always tell our team, and also told the council during the budget meeting, we cannot tax our way out of the situation. Using the TOT will be helpful, and it will be helpful to help us to restore some of those services. but we have to be way more sophisticated and look more broadly at many aspects of our operations and the service levels that we are providing. So just want to echo what Richard was saying. The TOT will be helpful, but we cannot tax ourselves out of the situation. And frankly, we should not tax ourselves out of it. We have to also, together with the community, figure out how we can run a more efficient, more cost-efficient city. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next one is from Wayne Cruzan. Wayne, you may need to unmute your mic. Are you there, Wayne? Part of the challenge with the Zoom webinar is even though we unmute you, you have to, as a user, once we've unmuted you, you'll have to unmute your mic first so that we can hear you.
We got a question from Maureen Manning. She asked, what city services include bargaining units? If the decision is to close some fire station, why can there not be fewer firemen? How much money can be raised with a half-cent sales tax? So all city employees belong to a bargaining unit except the city attorney and the city manager. We both are not members of a bargaining unit. We bargain for ourselves for the city council, but you have the firefighters are in the firefighter association. You have the police officers in the police officers association. You have the backbone of many of our service levels in the general employees of Monterey, the GEM. Over 200 employees are in the GEM unit. You have the managers in their own bargaining unit. So these are the bargaining units. The other question is, if the decision is to close some fire stations, why can there be not fewer firemen? Well, number one is we have not made that decision. And again, I cannot tell you whether we are closing fire stations or not. What we are proposing is that we will create an analysis to look really at the fire stations, the coverage that we are providing, and then we'll bring this back to the council and to the city and say, hey, do we need this? Is this what you want? And the decision will be from the community. Should the community say, well, we can foresee that maybe we can reduce a fire station or we can reduce an engine company, then there.
Okay, I think we may have lost Hans again here. Please bear with us one more time while we try to make the connection. Okay, you know what we'll do? We'll just keep going with this, and I'll try to take over while hopefully you can still hear me. Molly Evans.
Hi, thanks. If you can hear me all right?
Yep, we can hear you.
Super, thank you. So one thing that was brought up in last week's meeting with the council that I listened to was a question about selling assets. And Hans seemed to be very against selling assets. Unfortunately, that is the time I had to leave the meeting to go to another one. So I wasn't able to hear the full result of that conversation. But just now he mentioned having 4 recreation centers in the city, which seems a little bit duplicative, and it might be worth taking the time to review how many of those duplicative assets that you have and what you can divest. And now granted, I know he stated that some of these assets are revenue generators. I think the analysis needs to be looked at whether the revenue that those assets are generating will overcome the cost or the revenue gained by a sale. I think in the case of some of these assets, even if you sold off one of your recreation centers, you could look to sell it to a developer who might be able to convert that into workforce housing, and then you can solve 2 problems at once. So I suggest that you do some out of the box thinking, find some more creative ideas. And I think the city services eventually will have to be reduced, maybe eventually get back to where they are now, but I think you need to start small and start bold with some crazy ideas. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Molly.
Thank you, Molly.
I don't know if you heard the first part of the question, Hans, when you joined, but Molly was discussing the exploring selling assets. Also, we have 4 community centers. What are options? We have Archer Park, for example, which is an asset that's not a community center, but we rent out to a nonprofit group. Would you like to speak to that?
Thank you so much, Molly. Yes, selling assets is an option, and we will look at that because, frankly, we might be forced to use reserves, but we also might be used to refill reserves with one-time money, which you get when you sell assets. And so it's a real possibility, and we have to look at that. But I would also say we should not sell assets right away, because we should sell it when the time is right, and when you get the maximum profit from assets that you sell. But frankly, yes, this is a good idea, and we are looking into that as well. And I apologize for the interruption again. So next question, please.
Great. Next question comes from Elizabeth Schreier, and welcome. Thanks for joining.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Liz Schreier, and I'm a Monterey resident, and I'm currently a medical student up at UCSF. And I'm here today as a member of the Community Before Cops Coalition to basically condemn these sweeping budget cuts across recreation, library, and museum departments, and urge the council to look instead to the police department for the majority of these cuts. I can say personally, in my career and my life, the city's recreation, library, and museums have had a profound impact. They gave me my first job when I was 15 and are a major reason that I hope to return to the peninsula as a physician. They also, obviously, as you mentioned, offer affordable options for education, childcare, and enrichment, and a connection to place. Today, you talked about how the cuts proposed for recreation, library, and museums account for over 50% of all these total budget cuts, meaning that all of these programs are in jeopardy. And each department's budget has been threatened to be cut by 60%, which is roughly $8 million, as you said, and 40 layoffs, while the police department only faces an 8.2% cut and no layoffs. So I'm confused as to why the recreation, library, and museum departments were the only ones featured in your revenue expenditures chart. It looks like the total 2021 fiscal year budget for the police is $21 million, meaning that the department would only need to be cut by less than 40% to account for all the cuts across recreation, library, and museums. I don't have to remind you, hopefully, that this is a historic moment in time. We're at the convergence of 2 pandemics, and people around the world are risking their lives to protest police brutality. I'd like to just hear at this point your response as to why the police aren't included in these cuts, and urge the council to consider this as an opportunity for our city to be a leader in redirecting funds and prioritizing social services of people over police departments.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's an excellent question. You see the cuts drastically in recreation, sports center, and library because, frankly, they are not allowed to operate right now. And so at the present time, we don't even know when we are reopening the gym. We don't even know when we are allowed to reopen the Schulze Center. So it doesn't make sense to have a staffing level in place that is not serving anyone right now, because unfortunately, as you said, the pandemic has eliminated the opportunities for 80 or so employees to serve residents in those various functions. So what you saw is the budget reductions there were basically budget reductions that were caused by COVID-19, the pandemic, and I really encourage you to help us find a vaccine during your studies. But what you will see, and what I try to explain also, is that we are going forward restoring all those services. So there will be again a library, and the library will be again open and function, and there will be again programming inside the library what you have enjoyed probably as a child here. You will have the same programming in the sports center, you will have the same programming in our recreation centers. So while it looks like that you have large cuts there right now, but over the next 10, 12 months, we all hope that we bring them back up to the previous levels. Now, with respect to the question about how much money should be allocated to the police department, I'm fine. Whatever the community feels they need for their own protection, for their own safety, for their own expectations, that when they pick up 911, that they would like to have somebody respond to them as fast as possible. That will be the community wish. They will decide how much money they would like to allocate to the police or to the fire department. So again, we are, as the staff, just providing a basis for discussion. You, the community, you and your elected officials, our city council, you will have jointly to figure out what is the level that you would like to fund for what department. Next question, please.
Our next question comes from Laura Pratt. Laura, thanks for joining.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to bring up a few things. One of Hans's first slides about the general fund showed that police, fire, and public works are paid from the general fund. First of all, a lot of public works employees are paid from the enterprise funds, such as the parking fund, the Tidelands fund, the marina fund, and other enterprise funds that are not paid out of the general fund. So I wanted to clarify that. There was some discussion at the budget council meeting that fire overtime is roughly 2.4 million. And if that was to stop, I think that would pretty much cover a lot of these layoffs and cuts that you've proposed and that have taken effect today. The next thing I wanted to discuss was raising the TOT. We absolutely should be at 14% TOT, and I've said that for about 10 years now. Not 10, not 12, but 14% to be more in alignment with our competing destinations. And then also Hans mentioned that on top of that, the hoteliers pay the CCFD, which is the Conference Center Facilities District fee. I want to mention that both of those items, the transient occupancy tax or the hotel tax, along with the CCFD, those are pass-throughs. The hoteliers themselves do not pay these fees. They merely collect them from the visitors who are using our services and pass them through to the city. And unfortunately, not always on time, as you've mentioned several times that you've been trying to collect around 80-some thousand from one of the hoteliers that's owed their TOT to the city for some time now. So I just want to make sure that the citizens and the visitors and the hoteliers, everybody is aware that these are pass-through taxes and fees. The hoteliers collect them from their visitors and then they send them to the city eventually. So that is one item. The next thing I would mention is possibly lowering the percentage that goes to the NCIP. We all love the NCIP program, but maybe for a while until the city catches its fiscal breath, instead of 16% of our TOT going to the NCIP program, the neighborhood improvement program, perhaps that could be lowered to 10%. That way we could still do things like, you know, park improvements and roundabouts and things of that nature in neighborhoods, signage and that type of thing, but maybe not as much as we've done recently. And then another thing I just wanted to bring to light that I brought up a couple of council meetings ago is that we spend roughly $3 million a year in the executive pay. Hans alone makes about $20,000 a month. And when you're talking about a town our size, a little less than 29,000 people, it seems unconscionable to me that so many of these executives are making so much of the money, and yet you want to immediately cut the tree at the bottom and not expect it to fall over. It's also been very difficult to hear from Hans and others in the city administration that the citizens or the visitors don't care where their services come from, whether it's a contracted out service or a city employee that provides those services. And I beg to differ. We are a community. We are a small town. And we have built so many relationships with our visitors and our citizens and our contractors and our vendors and everybody else. And we value that, we treasure that. And I think our citizens do too. I'm one of them. And I think it does matter, and it's been very hurtful for the last 3+ years to hear from Hans and others in this administration that we all have targets on our back, that they want to get rid of the long-term employees and they want new employees that don't cost as much. And it's been really hard to hear that. And all of that was done long before COVID-19 appeared on the stage. So I just want to reiterate those things, that once again, TOT and CCFD, those are pass-throughs. NCIP could be reduced but still saved. And we can keep these long-term employees who have been so loyal to the city, so loyal, and to the citizens. And, you know, stop hurting the services that make money. I saw in the last council meeting, you were talking about contracting out the conference center and the Marina Harbor operations and the custodial services. We've talked about this before multiple times, especially during the recession. And we always came to the same conclusion, that it's more cost effective and better for the city and its citizens and its visitors if we retain those services in-house. So I think, once again, we need to look at cutting more at the top and not at the bottom, and take care of those who are actually the boots on the ground and providing these services that our citizens have come to love for so long. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Laura is one of our representatives of one of our bargaining units, the general employees for the city of Monterey. And I'm really looking forward meeting with you and your group, and to discuss how we can jointly as a community get our budget house in order again. And you raised good points with the TOT. And I know, of course, that you have been advocating for 10, 12, 14% for quite some time. And of course, at the end, we will see where the TOT will be landing and where we will go with that. The executive managers, the city attorney and I, we have taken voluntary salary cuts already, 10 or respectively 12%. And Laura, as I said, we will meet sometime this week. I think this has been set up, and I'm very hopeful that we jointly can work out some suggestions on how we jointly can reduce our overall cost structure here in the city of Monterey. With respect to the question of outsourcing or not outsourcing, we need to be very conscientious as city employees that we are diligently spend taxpayers' dollars. These are not our dollars. These are the dollars that are entrusted to us to be spent wisely. And so we have the obligation, Laura, to continuously look if we are really competitive with other service providers who just do the same as we do. And I completely understand that there is a lot of sentiment in having somebody from the city working on a tree or mowing the lawn or cleaning a facility. But what ultimately also is the question is, how much is the community willing to pay for those services? Or are other services more important for the community? Do they really would like to have a city employee for this service and another employee for another services who brings the same delivery of goods at a different price point? And that's the question that we are struggling with. And that's the question we will jointly figure out. And this is my response to some of the elements that Laura brought up. The NCIP is a charter amendment. 16% goes there per charter. So there's nothing that the council can decide differently other than going to the voters and asking them if they like to change the allocation of the TOT. So thank you, Laura, for that. And I'm looking forward to meeting with you and your team sometime this week.
Our next attendee with a question is Jeff Novin. Jeff?
Hi, Nat, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, thank you all so much for hosting this town hall. I'm also with the Community Before Cops Coalition, and I just wanted to build off of the points that folks have been making about the police and the funding that they've received at the expense of critical social services. And I think, Hans, when you're asking about whether or not the community wants to see these social services funded through the public budget, the answer is absolutely yes. And in fact, we want them restored to the glory that they had 15 years ago. We've seen not only the dramatic cuts to recreation, museums, and libraries, along with the associated layoffs in this proposed budget, but over the last 15 years, the police department has grown 77%, while the libraries have only grown 18%. The recreation department budget, 41%. So this is not the issue of defunding these services for continuing to fund the police now, but this is a systemic problem that has been the status quo in the city for 15 years and more. I think I want to also bring up Liz's point. If folks are paying attention to the news at all, they know that folks are across the country in outrage about even in a blue city with a blue city council, a blue state legislature, and a blue governor, still the police are committing flagrant acts of misinterpreting the public's trust. And I think if we're looking to prioritize public safety as the #1 concern, our coalition is 100% behind that. We want to see the most safe Monterey possible. And when you look at the data, we can see time and time again that accessible public services like libraries, museums, and recreation are the bedrock of having a safe community, while there's plenty of evidence within the community that the police are actually not serving the public safety. When we look at Monterey high school students, the Monterey Herald reported that 57% feel that the police do not make them safer. And we continue to pay that bill after taking on that responsibility from MPUSD just a moment ago, I think in 2018. So why are we paying for these police that I think folks are really questioning both in our community and across the country, whether or not they are the primary agents of public safety, or are we going to fund the social services that we know with both testimonials from our community and through the greater country are the ones that actually promote public safety. I want to encourage folks that are hearing this and are resonating with that to look at our coalition. You can look up Community Before Cops. And also, I wanted to note that I've spoken with some of the staff from the libraries and recreation departments. I used to work in the recreation department myself, and we've heard that they will not be able to, with their skeletal staffs, be able to continue the programming. I've heard specifically from librarians that are currently engaged in this work that they will not be able to do a lot of the things that you need libraries to do, including basic book borrowing services with the absolutely decimated staff that they've received. So I'm curious if you could respond to why over the last 15 years have we seen the ballooning of the police department when we know that these social services that have not received anywhere near that amount of funding are the ones really providing public safety. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You're representing this this as something that has happened just because it has happened. This what you call the ballooning. So what is happening is that your elected officials, your council members, your community sets the priorities. And when you look at the police department and you see that we have added police officers over the couple of years, in the past 5 years or so, we have restored not even the police service levels to levels that were here when I started in the city of Monterey in 1997, 23 years ago. So the underlying assumption is that this just has happened. No, it did not happen. It happened because the community decides how they want to allocate their budget. And when you hear that the community says we like to have traffic enforcement, which the community expressed a couple of times over the past years, and we went from 5 traffic enforcement officers to 0, we restored this as a mandate over the past years by adding 2 more traffic enforcement officers to that. So when we go to neighborhood associating meetings, the #1 problem that we hear from neighborhoods is traffic enforcement. So this is just one example to explain that what has happened over the past years has happened because this is a community-based input, and the community ultimately decides how they like to allocate the taxpayer dollars. Now, the other part is the recreation program and the library program that the city of Monterey is offering has been second to none. Nobody else on the peninsula in the county offers the type of programs that we have. We have a library open 7 days a week. We have 4 recreation centers. We have a sports center. We have an amount of 400 to 500, 600 part-timers during the summertime that are basically supplying us with part-time labor, and you and Liz apparently were part of those part-timers that helped us out during the camp. So it's not that we are not having a great recreation program. The challenge that we face, though, is that COVID-19 has wiped all those camps out, has wiped out the services that our residents receive in the Schulze Center. Now, we will restore those, and they will be coming back. At what level? Again, will be community-based. And of course, if the community wants to make changes to the budget in the police department, absolutely, that is the right of the community to decide how much they like to have public safety through their police officers. But I want to say one more thing. Let's not confuse a national topic with a local topic. Our police officers are way better than what you have seen on TV just recently. So I want to be very clear that our police officers, our police chief came out immediately after the incident in Minneapolis and condemned what they were seeing. And I can tell you that we are very, very proud of the police officers that work for us, about their education and their measured approach. And if you have been out on Saturday at Window on the Bay, you saw how our police officers ensured that everyone was feeling comfortable. So having said that, at the end of the day, our job will be to reflect what this community wants, and everyone has a voice. And at the end of the day, the council members will decide how we are going forward. All right, thank you. Next question.
All right, next one comes from Susan 9. Susan.
Hello. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I've really been enjoying the comments from the public. Lots of great ideas. This is a very valuable activity, and I hope to see more of it. I think with in balancing any budget, whether it's your home budget or big city budget, you have to look at the 2 prongs that were pointed out by Hans. You want to look at ways to live within your means, which may mean readjusting your priorities or making cuts. And you also look at any ways possible to increase revenue. Since the police department has come up repeatedly, my only feelings about that, I think enforcement is very important right now. We have a lot of social issues going on in our community that require a high level of confidence and enforcement. I wouldn't recommend cutting the police force, and I'm impressed with the police force. However, I do feel that it's costing a lot in overtime pay, which is one issue I'd like the council to look at and see if there's any way to lessen the amount of that being paid, not only for financial reasons, but because I don't think anyone should have to work those long hours and be at their best. I'd also like to consider the possibility, we've had 4 or 5 positions that have been vacant and seem to be constantly remaining vacant on the police force. I understand, I've had it explained to me the reasons for that. that it's difficult to fill those positions, but if they're left on the books, that's a big expense. That's probably over $500,000 right there in positions that are vacant and are likely to remain so. So I'm wondering if temporarily, just for the balancing of the budget, it might be prudent to temporarily put a hold on those and not fund them as part of this year's budget. And then when things get better, create those vacancies in case we can attract some new candidates. As I have a suggestion, I see a lot of dependence right now at the city level on the dependence on the use of outside contractors. Sometimes doing jobs that I feel that the current staff are perfectly capable of doing as good or better a job than I see these outside contractors doing at great expense. So maybe just look at that and see how some savings can be garnered by less use of outside contractors. As far as the income producing, I'm a big fan of increasing the TOT tax. I think to the highest level that is possible. It does require an election measure to approve that, I believe. So I think some studies would have to be done as far as what the community would support. But as an earlier speaker mentioned, that is not a burden on the businesses or the hotels or the residents. It's paid by the people who visit here, and it should be in line with other tourist cities in California. I had put this in an email question, so you don't have to read my email question, but I was kind of surprised to see that how many buildings that the city actually owns and facilities. And I was surprised when the Monterey Museum was going out of that beautiful building on Pacific Avenue that the city owns, that they had only been paying $1 a year in rental to rent that space. And I just would like there to be, and maybe this is happening, and you can comment on that, a look at all the facilities that the city owns and whether they are currently being rented or leased at true market value. I don't think we can afford to be too generous right now when people and staff are being laid off and losing their jobs. So how to maximize the income potential of all city-owned buildings. As far as
Susan, if I can ask you to wrap it up, because we like to get a lot of people through there, please, if you don't mind. That's
okay,
why.
last two suggestions, just to make the recreation centers and the sports center and that they should charge enough to be self-supporting, and I think the community will support that. I think the level is great, it's fantastic, we're getting a huge bargain, we all realize that. I think we will accept less or pay more if the services remain, and the same goes with the library. We get free use of the community room every month as a neighborhood association. We don't pay anything for our library card. I love the library, I want it back, and when we get it back, I think we need to be willing to pay more to keep it, especially to keep it open 7 days a week, which I know of no other city that does that. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. These are all great proposals and great suggestions. You ask about the rent. That's a very good discussion to have. And I'm sure we will have a robust discussion, because when you look at organizations that rent from the city of Monterey, such as First Night, they expect not to pay market rent because they are delivering services in a different way that the community cherishes. The same with the Museum of Art. So your point is well taken. The city is in a way a landlord and a property manager, but they are also a city council, and they need to do things that have benefit for the whole community. So the issue of the rent and renting out facilities is not straightforward. So if we act like a landlord, we get accused of being overly greedy. If we are acting in the community spirit, like you see with the Maritime Museum or the Museum of Art or the First Night, we're doing this to benefit for the community. So there is a balance, of course, and it will be helpful to discuss that. Also, I appreciate the statements you made about the cost recovery, and also that your neighborhood association would be willing to pay for the use of the library room. So thank you for all those very creative proposals. Ned, if we can basically keep our questions brief. I understand there are some statements that are important to some people to make, but for us it's really important also to have a wider variety of proposals. We heard already twice the same proposal. So if you have already heard somebody else say it, let somebody else speak. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Alicia Ragland. Hi, you're live with us.
Hi. Yeah, I have a similar comment, but I just wanted to elaborate really quickly. You said in your presentation, Mr. Oslar, that the number 1 and 3 priorities are public safety and to encourage a speedy recovery to the hospitality industries, but you never mentioned the people that make up those industries. They are workers. They are a lot of low-income workers and a lot of people who are struggling right now in ways that no one could have anticipated.
Yes.
The proposed budget includes 60% cuts to libraries, museums, and recreation. All of these things are necessary for underemployed people right now to take care of themselves and their mental health. Yeah. The police cannot provide those services to underemployed people, to people who are right on the brink of facing homelessness. The proposed budget cuts also include the cut to a homeless outreach program. I think all of this reflects a very disturbing reflection of Monterey's mission. I don't believe that this reflects the city of Monterey's true mission. The police cannot keep us safe from the coronavirus. In fact, we all know that jails and prisons are breeding grounds for the spread of and mutation of COVID-19.
Alicia, I want to help you quickly, because what you're saying does not reflect our budget. What you will see is, and I like to just be heard, because I said it twice and I will say it happily again a third time. We will be restoring recreation services. The library will be open for those who are unemployed and who have to do job research. Just let us open the library. It's not in our power right now to open the library. The same applies to the recreation centers. We will be reopening that as well. So I just want to say, I've said this already before, there will be those elements. And when you spoke about that our priorities overlook the folks that have lost their jobs, well, we did something that no other city has done here on the peninsula or in the county. We created a rental emergency assistance program that will help those folks that have lost their job in Monterey to pay their rent. That program has been set up and it will start in July and August. And we're using city funds plus federal funds to create this rental assistance program. And what we also did in order to make sure that those folks get their jobs back is something that will be in front of council tomorrow, awarding $1 million in grants to small businesses that are applying for this, from anywhere from $1,000 to $25,000, to ensure that they can continue to operate. So what we have done, and what you will see tomorrow also as agenda item number 6 or 7, if I remember the number correctly, is that we are also bringing grants back to the business community to re-employ all those folks that have been laid off in the 2nd or 3rd week of COVID-19. So I just wanted to say, I hear what you're saying. I understand the general direction of the arguments with respect to police funding and recreation funding, but the mere facts are, we will bring back recreation, we will bring back the library, we will bring back the sports center, and we have also ensured that this city is spending $1.8 million in rental assistance and grant programs as the city of Monterey. So with that, next question, please.
Okay, our next question, Joanne White.
Nat, can you point back to Alicia one more time? Because
Yeah.
I think maybe
Sure.
Alicia had a point to make that I didn't let her make, and I want to be sure that Alicia makes that point.
Yeah, let's hear Alicia.
To get to your point, and please acknowledge what I have said as well.
Yes, I appreciate the rental assistant program and the small grants agenda item for tomorrow, which I will be reviewing and present for. The only thing I wanted to add was that when this pandemic is over, we don't want the police budget to be as robust as it is now. We want the money back into the programs that I previously mentioned. We don't need the police to keep us safe if we have healthy communities. This is what's going to get us through the coronavirus. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you. Let's see, Joanne White, are you still with us? You may need to hit unmute on your screen to be able to speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, first off, I want to say that with so much unrest in America, I really appreciate that the city of Monterey is taking time to listen to the residents on how we as a community want to prioritize our values. I've lived in Monterey for 27 years. I worked at the library for 22 years. I saw firsthand how important Monterey Library and bookmobile services were to older adults, military families, and residents in low-income neighborhoods who would not have otherwise had access to books. My daughters both participated in and led City of Monterey summer camps. I saw firsthand how Parks and Recreation provides much needed childcare at a subsidized rate, allowing families to work while children are out of school. And as you look at the budget, I ask you to look at it not in terms of what services add the most value to the bottom line, but in terms of what adds the most value to building a better community, and balance the checkbook by making cuts more equitable across departments. Leaving the library with 3 staff members is not equitable. There are creative ways to provide library services even without opening the building at this time, like curbside pickup and safe ways to employ the bookmobile to serve residents who can't get to the library. So I know that you're saying the building can't be opened at this time, but there are creative ways to provide library services. That's it.
Yeah, thank you, Joanne. Joanne was our bookmobile driver for many years, and we miss you. And then, Joanne, I hope you're doing fine. And yes, we're working on curbside pickup as we speak, and we'll accommodate this also with the appropriate staffing as we are allowed to expand our services in the library as well. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Chelsea Lee. Chelsea?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. So I wanted to speak to the council and the community members, and Hans, I'd also like to just mention that this is a 2-year budget, and so the choices, right, that we make, it's not just now, it's also going to be next year. Is that correct?
We are at the back end of a biennial budget. So FY19 to 20 to 21 was a 2-year budget. So we are talking right now basically on amending our existing 2-year budget for the next 12 months.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify. I was born and raised here on the Monterey Peninsula, and I am a teacher, a camp director, a former City of Monterey employee, and I'm also part of the Community Before Cops Coalition. But I'm also a white woman who is here to fight for what too many Black people have felt alone in fighting. I'm here to voice concerns of many in this community and communities across the country right now that are in pain. The students I've taught, the campers I've mentored, my friends and family, we're all hurting. Black lives must matter in our town halls, our city budgets, and our police departments. It's not just an issue in Minneapolis. It's not just in New York. This is a local issue. As a social studies teacher, I can't help but point to history for guidance today. Our country has been sick long before COVID-19. The epidemic of racism in this country has killed well beyond 100,000 people in our history. We need only look right here in Monterey, where nearby missions forcibly enslaved the local indigenous Rumsen and Ohlone communities, whose surviving members will forever deal with the trauma of that genocide. The vast infrastructure and concentrated wealth in the United States since its founding has been built by Black people without compensation. When slavery, as it was known, ended in the 1860s, it was replaced with Black codes and Jim Crow laws that enabled police to imprison Black folks for nearly any reason and to keep them working in chain gangs. The war on drugs effectively incarcerated yet another generation of Black men. According to the NAACP, between 1980 and 2015, the number of people incarcerated in America increased from roughly 500,000 to over 2.2 million, with African Americans imprisoned at 5 times the rate of white people. We have a problem in America, and the civil rights movement did not end in the 1960s. It is not enough for Monterey to think it is not racist. It is. These systems came long before us, and they are working by design. Now is the time for Monterey to be actively and proudly anti-racist, to demonstrate where we stand with our mouths and our money. The status quo is clearly killing people. The status quo is lawlessness, as officers are rarely charged and never mind convicted. The status quo is this proposed budget. I hear you. We can't just tax our way out of this problem. We need to scale back our investment in policing our community members to provide the money needed to house, feed, and truly serve them. Change requires hard and bold choices. Budget cuts during a pandemic are precisely the time to look critically at how we spend our money. Families everywhere are adapting, and so should the city of Monterey. Since the recession, the police department saw increases to their budget year over year, while other community-based social programs and experienced employees continue to be temporarily eliminated, yet never return. How many times will we make these same cuts? If we gut our most accessible and affordable social programs in libraries, museums, and recreation by 60%, while police have a less than 9% impact, is that not maintaining this problematic status quo? Why not lean instead on those critical experts in social services to continue that work from home during COVID? Many well-intentioned white people have been asking themselves, I see the problems, I know there's discrimination in the system, but what can we do? This. Use our power and privilege to shift our resources to better reflect the needs of our community. Our community needs librarians that support with job searches and teach our kids reading in a safe place after school. We need our recreation programs that offer enriching safe spaces for all ages, from toddlers and teens to seniors. We do not need police officers on school campuses. Our students agree. In a 2018 survey, 57% of Monterey High School students said the resource officer did not make them feel safe. No one even asked them if officers made them feel scared, intimidated, or unable to learn. I will tell you as a teacher that they do. We need to listen. If a program is not working, why do we continue to fund it at the cost of universal services for the community? The city of Monterey has a huge opportunity here. These programs you claim will come back never do. You asked how we would balance our budget. Invest in our communities before cops. Defend police, defund police, and fund programs that provide real public safety. Why is Monterey City Council not acting as anti-racist leaders and divesting from police? And I just want to say that I'm echoing the statements of many that came before me. I agree with Laura Pratt that we should be charging 14% for hotel taxes, with Susan 9 that we should be removing vacant positions from the police department. I agree with Joanne that the library can and should continue. And I think the community is being pretty clear on how we would like to spend our money. Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea. Next question, Nat.
All right, next question looks like Steve Rubin. Steve?
Thank you for allowing me to speak. 10 years ago, I mentioned to the mayor that access to computers for our homeless and low-income people in the city was very important. And I suggest that while you're cutting the library, you may wish to think about how to provide online services to those people who can't even make this meeting because they don't have the access. So please think about how to hold on to that service even if it can't fit into the library, because part of the community needs it. Couple of other comments I have. One is, I recall when the Sports Center opened and the city said, we didn't use any public money for it. And at the end of the first year, the city said, we didn't use any public money for it. I'm aghast at the fact that things changed over the last 20 some years. And I'm curious as to when did the city start pumping money into the sports center? And a comment for some of the previous speakers, I'm sorry, I don't think we have enough police enforcement in this city when you look at all these people walking around without masks, endangering those of us who live here. And I think they should take their social diatribes to a council meeting in the comment session and not hijack this budget meeting. I'm sorry, but they irked me. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, thank you for your suggestions and constructive ideas. Nat, next question, please.
Okay, next one, let's hear from Zoe Carter. Zoe, thanks for joining.
Hi, Nat. Thank you. And thank you, Hans. I have a couple things I would like to address. First, I fully support our public safety in this city, and I have concerns about what's going on with the threats to the cuts of the fire department. First, I don't agree with the fact that we should be cutting the reserve ladder truck, which I have myself climbed to the top of. And I think it's critically important that we cannot lose that 25% of the time. That puts us at risk for not being prepared for a emergency greater than 2 floors. God forbid we had something that happened like what happened in LA. And if we weren't prepared for that, that would be terrible, and terrible for our residents and terrible for our firefighters. I know, Hans, you said that we have to wait till July to figure out what's gonna happen with the paramedic program, but I have been on a ride along with our firefighters. I don't know how many people in our city have, or if our council members have, but our firefighters arrive on scene more often than not before our paramedics, our AMR does. And I think that, you know, having our firefighters with paramedics is critically important to our city. And I know that they had a save at City Hall last week, right in front of Colton Hall. And I just think that continues to stress the importance of having our firefighter and paramedic program intact. And lastly, I know that Hans, you had said that our staffing levels would stay intact, but I know that the budget mentioned that there would be a training supervisor and a few other senior level staff positions that would go in place of where firefighters are now. And those people are not meant to be on engines. So I think that we need to be really careful about what we're doing, and we need to keep our prevention with the fire department, because now we're going into fire season and we need to be aware of that. And everything is all COVID all the time. And we're getting ready for public safety power shutoffs, and nobody's talking about that. And I'm very concerned about that with our city and our community, with everybody sheltering in place. And I also just want to say, talking about cutting public safety now, when we're talking about increasing density in housing, which I fully support, I live near Garden Road, but I think we need to be aware of increasing our public safety with more residents and more housing, and be supportive of that measure, because I think we're going to need it as we increase our infrastructure, and also support Public Works to be able to have them work on our infrastructure as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. I think maybe I was not clear enough. None of the firefighters that are currently staffing our stations, there are no reduction in the firefighter staffing in our 4 stations. We have 2 engine companies downtown and additional engine companies out at Montecito and on Hawthorne, as well as 1 more at the airport. So a total of 5 engine companies are 24/7 on duty in the city of Monterey. And the point with the ladder truck is well taken. The point is that if our ladder truck, our primary ladder truck, is out of commission, we never had actually 2 ladder trucks for such a for the endurance of the time here. We just recently have 2. But if that primary engine is taken out, mutual aid will automatically come and help with fires. There are other fire stations on the peninsula that have ladder trucks for that as well. Having said all that, you bring up many great points, and I'm sure that they will be part of our conversation and our discussion. So thank you for that, Zoe. I would suggest it's now 8 o'clock. We add another 15 minutes to that because of the downtime through through the connectivity here. And if I can ask the next statements, please, if you can just give us your proposal or your suggestion how we can address also our budget, that would be very helpful for us. So Ned, please.
Great. Next one, Ryan Herron. Ryan, thanks for joining.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Ryan, we can hear you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'll try to keep it brief, but I do want to mention that a lot of previous speakers brought up a lot of great points, and I want to thank them for doing so. I'll try to keep it just to, per Hans's suggestion, to items that can help with the budget and the revenue, although there's a million things I want to address. One, the city, anyone who's been in the city over the last couple of weeks can clearly see that the city is getting packed on weekends. Day trippers and tourists are coming into town in droves, just as they would in any normal summer. And yet the city has still not fully restored parking operations and parking enforcement. There's been some minor parking enforcement recontinued with the surface lots and the waterfront lots, but the large parking garages in the city remain empty. I see no reason why those can't be reopened. Parking is a major revenue generator for the city. It's not a cost for the city. In fact, it's such a revenue generator that the city is borrowing $500,000 from the parking fund in order to give it away to local small businesses while laying off our own full-time employees in the same parking division. So I would encourage the city to restore full parking operations with full enforcement. Second, the city of Carmel and other cities in our area are moving to approve outdoor dining for restaurants. That experiment seems to have gone very well in the city of Carmel, in our neighboring city, and I would encourage Monterey to consider the same, possibly shutting down Alvarado Street and allowing outdoor dining. That could bring a lot of people out a lot sooner than waiting for indoor dining to be approved. Finally, I know we talked earlier about selling off some assets. One asset that I don't believe I heard brought up so far, but I want to bring up is the old Capitol site, which is a large piece of real estate the city has acquired that is offering nothing of any benefit to any city resident or visitor right now, and is an asset that could easily be sold off and no one would miss it. So with that, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan. We brought back, I believe, 7 or 9 parking employees already. I understand exactly what you're saying. You want to see more parking employees being brought back, and absolutely, we will look into that as we see that our operations are picking up. That's a great point. Thank you.
Great. Our next caller is Renee Franken. Renee. Hi, you're live.
Hi, this is actually Barbara Moore. I'm sharing the computer with Renee. We both own property in Monterey. Lived here for 12 years, and before that we were in Pacific Grove and went through a lot of the budget cut problems there and have done that with the state. So I really understand the predicament you're in. I have a couple of comments. One, I think you really need to look at new revenue sources, not just the TOT. I think the city made a big mistake when it didn't bring the rental on the leases at the wharf up to market rate over a graduated period of time. I don't know if there are any more of those leases coming up anywhere in the near future. And I don't know if you have any reopening provisions in the leases that you've already renewed, but I think you should take a serious look at that and any other property that the city has in terms of trying to get up to market rate rents, and any other sources of revenue that there are. I went through the cuts to the library in Pacific Grove, and I just want to share the experience there, which is it's not as simple as bringing the library back. And I don't know when you would do that anyway, because if you cut the budget by the 60% that you're at this point proposing, you can't just reopen it whenever the state decides that you can start having the library open again. People are going to have to go elsewhere for jobs because they can't just sit around and wait. And the city of PG is still trying to hire staff because they don't offer the salaries that other surrounding communities have done. So I think you're going to find yourself in the same position where you're not going to really be able to staff the library appropriately. And I would say that the library does a lot more than just provide books for people to enjoy themselves. As one person said, the computer services are there for kids that don't otherwise have access to computers and Wi-Fi. People need it for job hunting, and that's obviously a serious problem after the virus. In addition, librarians provide a real service. The internet today provides all sorts of information, and people don't know how to wade their way through it. And there are examples that we've heard in Pacific Grove, I'm sure true here in Monterey, where people have life-threatening health conditions. They need to go find information. They need the help of a reference librarian to weed through the material. So there's a lot of benefits to the community. And I think a 60% budget cut is so disproportionate to the other cuts. I fully support the police and fire department, but the disparity is really marked. And I think you need to take a serious look at trying to balance the budget a bit more equitably across the board. I think you also have to look at contracting out. My experience with the state is that contracting out is often far more expensive. So I think these are all things that you can look at. And the other thing is the city does have the capacity to borrow money. And obviously the virus is causing a huge problem now. That will level out as things return to a more open state. So I think to try to cut the budget to the extent you are now without looking at some borrowing to help temporarily carry us through is an opportunity you're missing. I appreciate the opportunity to give my comments.
Barbara, thank you so much. Barbara was the right name, I believe. Barbara, thank you so much. That was extremely helpful. I want to reflect on part of what you said about bringing back the library is harder than I might think, or we might think. So I'll take that comment especially to heart right now, because it sounded to me that you had experience in that as well. One element that I also promised the council is that we will adjust our budget going forward as we see revenues picking up. So if we look into September and we can find that July, August were really strong months, we will adjust that budget. What we are presenting to the council over the next, and to the community over the next 2 weeks, is our best estimate for the next 12 months. But what I responded to a council member question last week is that we have to tinker with that. We have to adjust it. And those adjustments, I personally think, will be upwards, bringing the revenues sooner up than we think and bringing back those employees. Having said all that, I really appreciate your thoughtful comments. Thank you.
Okay. Next comment comes from Jody Emerson, or at least that's the name that we see on the screen. Hi, Jody. You may need to click unmute on your screen so that we can hear you. There we go.
Unmuted. First of all, I want to thank you all for this opportunity to learn more about the budget and to share our comments. And I appreciate everyone who has made comments. I also would like to see a more balanced budget with more cuts to the police department, and to see our recreation and our services for young people supported. I'll just say that much, and I'll give my time to someone else.
Thank you, Jody.
Okay, thank you, Jody. Let's hear now from Sherry Lauter. Sherry, thanks for joining. You may need to unmute yourself. Are you there, Sherry?
Okay. Yes. Can you hear us?
Yep. There we go. We can hear you.
Yeah. This is Vince Lauter. I'm Sherry's husband. And I agree with Ryan, who said, let's turn Alvarado Street into a pedestrian-only street that'll put more seating out there. It'll bring in more income to our city. I got another suggestion, too, that when we're talking about the staffing at the sports center and the library, we should look into the idea of using volunteers. There's a lot of people in the city with experience and the time available. And not just at those two facilities, but also to do grounds maintenance. We live in Skyline. I would be glad if the city gave me a weed whacker. I'd be glad to go out and help clean up some of the city here and save the city expenses that way. So just some thoughts on how to do things on the volunteer side of the house rather than relying on in-house, and perhaps save some people costs that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vince, for the proposal. I want to quickly close the loop what Ryan said and Vince said. As you all know, of course, we have outdoor seating already on Alvarado Street, as well as in front of Montrey's and Cali Principal. But what we expect is actually a letter from the Old Monterey Business Association that will ask us to block off Alvarado Street from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily and allow outdoor seating, with the exception of Tuesdays when they have the farmers market there from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. So I'm expecting that this letter will come forward. It was expressed to me that this is the gist of the letter that OMBA will sending us, and with that we will be, of course, happy to accommodate that and turn Alvarado Street into a large event space for visitors, for locals, for the restaurants, etc. So I think that is almost breaking news here, but that will be coming soon. Closing Alvarado from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. and of course maintaining the Tuesday farmers market. Next question, please.
Next question, Ellen McEwen. Ellen, thank you for joining.
Hi there.
Hi.
You can hear me, I'm assuming.
Yes, we can.
I'm so pleased to be able to speak. I'm a commissioner for Parks and Recreation, and of course I want to speak on behalf of our wonderful sports center and recreation department, which so many people have spoken tonight in support of. And I also wanted to approach the idea of volunteer commission. I know that the aquarium has a lot of volunteers and it's very time consuming to train volunteers, but if there were some money spent in finding a position so that we could have a department of volunteerism and it could be sort of part of a community effort, that so many wonderful, educated, devoted, retired people could have a place to put their energy. I think it might be a clever way to expand our workforce. My other thought is that I'm very interested in fundraising, and I know that there's friends of the library and they do wonderful, wine and chocolate fundraising, but I have some ideas on fundraising for the sports center because I know we're going to need money for the swimming pool. And but it costs a lot to set up a foundation, and I'm wondering if maybe the city attorney, since their office wasn't cut that much, perhaps they would be willing to help financially or with their legal expertise in setting that up. Thank you very much. You guys are wonderful, and this is tough stuff. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ellen. Appreciate it. And Ellen is one of our volunteers. So thank you, Ellen. Nat, do we have another question?
Yes, we do. We've got Kayla Fossum.
Yeah, I suggest we take Kyler's as last question and then we wrap it up and let the folks please know where they can send their question to, please. And also tomorrow is another council meeting and we will discuss the budget there as well. And all of those that wanted to share with us also, please use that opportunity as well. So Nat, if you please help me with Kayla.
Hi, can you hear
sure.
me?
We'll take Kayla's question. Yep.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Kayla. We
Hi.
can hear you.
Okay, I'll make this very quick. This won't happen with the help with the immediate budget, but I would really like to see usage fees increased, especially when we get back to Car Week. Why can't we slap on some more or higher event fees? And is there any way to get any revenue off the sales of these multi-million-dollar cars? That's it. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Kayla.
Kayla.
So,
Okay, well, maybe I should just, before you end with your comments, I'll just share with how individuals can submit their comments. Thank you for those who were able to participate in this event. We had at its peak over 333 attendees. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get to all of the questions that were submitted, but all of the input that you've shared, please feel free to send it in writing to cityclerk@monterey.org. It's, again, the email address is cityclerk@monterey.org. And what will happen is that that email will be included in the submitted comments and also posted on our website at monterey.org/submitted comments. And that all those comments and feedback are forwarded to the City Council and also made public for all of us to read and get your great feedback and consider that fantastic feedback. So please take advantage of that. You can also watch our council meeting tomorrow night. We will be streaming on YouTube Live. Rest assured it will work this time for our online council meeting because it's not through Zoom. We actually work with our partner Access Monterey Peninsula for that, AMP. So you can watch on channel 25 as well as youtube.com/City of Monterey for that live feed. Our council meeting, we have a 4 o'clock afternoon session and then a 7 o'clock evening session. And the budget item will be heard as the second item scheduled for the 7 o'clock meeting. So we hope you can participate then as well, where you'll have a chance to call in and provide additional public comment. Back to Hans.
yeah, thank you everyone for participating tonight. This is a process that we are going through. At the end of this process, there has to be a decision. And luckily, it's not me and it's not you who will make the decision. Luckily, it will be your elected officials, the City Council. And in my experience, the City Councils that I have seen and worked together for many, many years now, they always make the right decision. While some of us sometimes disagree with them, even I as a staff member sometimes did not see the wisdom of some of their decisions. In the end, the council members always make a very good decision to the benefit of all community members. And that's, again, what we have to balance out today. You heard today a great deal of various opinions, but you also heard a lot of good suggestions that we will follow up with. And I hope that we also get a lot of suggestions from you through our channels that Ned just have explained to you, and also the chat that we read while we were conducting this outreach was also very informative for us. So I want to thank you all for your engaged discussion, for all the points you raised. They all make us better as a community, and I am hopeful that by tomorrow we already see a little clearer where we want to go, and then hopefully before June 30th, that we will have a budget in place. And again, like I stated earlier, and I will say it again, we will bring back the recreation programs, we will bring back the sports center, we will bring back the library. And as we are marching through this pandemic, let's not forget we are still in the pandemic, as we are marching through that and as our revenues go up or go down, we will adjust, and we will adjust in the way that we are allowed to do so, and in the way also that our community wants us to adjust. And I want to let you know you all have been heard, and we will process everything that you have said. Your council members will hear from us. We will try to summarize what we heard yesterday. And of course, please be patient with us, because we work very hard to get this all solved and addressed in a way that the whole community can stand behind that. With that, thank you very much. Stay safe, practice social distancing. We are not out of COVID-19 by no means. And Monterey is still a beautiful place to live and work in. Thank you so much and have a great night.